There are moments in life when respect isn't given freely. It must be claimed. And here's the truth. Respect doesn't come from shouting louder, arguing harder, or proving your worth. Respect is commanded in silence and in just a few carefully chosen words. Today, I'm going to share with you 5 phrases so powerful that when you speak them once, people instinctively pause, adjust, and give you the respect you deserve. The power of words as symbols. Every word you speak is more than a sound carried on air. It is a symbol. It carries with it centuries of meaning, echoes of culture, memories from childhood, and archetypes rooted deep in the human psyche. When you say something aloud, you do not simply express an idea. You awaken an entire world of associations in the minds of those who hear it. This is why some words cut like a blade while others heal like medicine. It is why a single sentence can command respect, ignite fear, or inspire loyalty. Words are not neutral. They are keys that unlock hidden doors within the unconscious, shaping the way people see you, and more importantly, how you see yourself. Think of the first time someone told you that you were capable of something greater than you believed. That word, spoken at the right time, may have planted a seed inside you. On the other hand, remember the sting of being dismissed, insulted, or told that you weren't enough. That phrase, too, embedded itself into your inner world, shaping the way you carried yourself. Words live inside us long after they have been spoken. They become scripts that repeat, often unconsciously, guiding our actions and beliefs. This is the hidden power of language. It is not just communication, it is creation. When we understand words as symbols, we begin to recognize that respect, authority, and influence are not just about tone or voice or physical presence. They are about the language we choose. Consider phrases like "I will" versus "I'll try." Both express intention, yet one radiates certainty and the other uncertainty. People instinctively respond to the energy behind the word. "I will" summons trust, conviction, and strength. "I'll try" plants doubt, hesitation, and weakness. The unconscious mind registers these signals immediately, long before the rational mind analyzes them. Symbols also operate through repetition. When a leader says, "We will rise," the phrase becomes more than a promise. It turns into a symbolic rallying cry. Repetition engraves it into memory, and soon it becomes part of collective identity. History has shown that entire nations have been moved, for better or worse, by the symbolic power of repeated words. The human psyche craves symbols because they connect us to something larger than ourselves. A phrase spoken with clarity can become a banner under which people gather, fight, or heal. But the symbolic power of words is not only external, it is internal too. The language you use with yourself builds or breaks your inner architecture. Consider the difference between saying, "I am broken," versus "I am healing." The first crystallizes identity around damage. The second crystallizes identity around growth. The words you use about yourself are symbols that the unconscious mind accepts as truth, replaying them in behavior, posture, and even physiology. This is why self-talk matters. It is not casual chatter. It is the ongoing construction of your own symbolic reality. There is also the dimension of silence. Silence, too, is symbolic. Choosing not to speak when provoked or pausing before responding can create an even stronger impression than words. In those moments, silence becomes the symbol of control, of mastery over impulse. It conveys that you are not compelled by others' emotions, but rooted in your own center. People interpret silence as power, and so it becomes one of the most potent symbolic words of all. The potency of words as symbols explains why boundaries, when spoken aloud, shift dynamics instantly. Saying no is not just refusal, it is a symbol of sovereignty. Saying enough is not just a command, it is a line drawn in the sand that reorganizes the field of respect. The moment such phrases are spoken, the atmosphere changes. They resonate deeper than explanation or justification because they call upon primal recognition, the recognition of authority, of limit, of order. Words, when chosen well, don't just communicate, they recalibrate the unspoken hierarchy between people. We see this in personal relationships, where someone who never asserted themselves suddenly says, "That doesn't work for me." The entire dynamic tilts. The person who once bent under pressure now stands upright, and everyone around them feels the shift. That single phrase acts as a symbol of transformation. Or in professional life, when a leader opens a meeting with, "Let's be clear," the words pull scattered attention into focus, forcing alignment. They are not mere filler. They symbolize authority stepping forward. To grasp the true power of words, one must understand that language is not passive. It acts, it shapes, it constructs. In the psyche, words are spells, each syllable charged with energy that can wound or heal, bind or release, command or yield. The unconscious does not differentiate between literal and symbolic. When you say, "I can't," the unconscious accepts it as reality. When you say, "I can," it accepts that too. And so, moment by moment, phrase by phrase, you carve the pathways of your future. This is why careless words are dangerous. Sarcasm, for instance, may seem playful on the surface, but beneath it lies the symbol of dismissal, of undermining. Over time, these symbols erode trust. On the other hand, a simple, "I believe in you," spoken sincerely, can become a guiding star in someone's life. Each phrase carries weight beyond intention. It carries symbolic charge. To use language without awareness is to unleash symbols blindly, without regard for the realities they create. To use language consciously is to wield a tool of extraordinary influence. When you speak, you are never merely exchanging information. You are shaping perception, identity, and reality itself. This is the sacred responsibility of language, to recognize that words are not empty. They are living symbols that echo across the inner and outer world. The shadow of silence is often misunderstood. Many assume that to remain silent is to be powerless, passive, or invisible. Yet silence carries its own weight, its own form of authority. It is not an absence, but a presence, a shadow that fills the room with meaning. What is left unsaid can pierce deeper than what is spoken. Silence has the ability to shape perception, influence behavior, and reveal hidden truths. When words are withheld, people lean into the silence, searching for meaning, projecting their own fears and assumptions onto it. This is why silence can command attention more effectively than noise. Think of a moment when someone you respected paused before speaking. That pause was not empty, it was electric. The silence created anticipation, and in that anticipation, respect grew. The audience leaned forward, waiting, hanging on to the unsaid. The silence became a force, amplifying whatever came next. Compare that to someone who fills every space with chatter, explanations, and justifications. The more they speak, the less weight their words carry. Their language becomes diluted, and the silence they fear would have given them power instead. there is a shadow side to silence as well. Silence can protect, but it can also conceal. It can preserve dignity, but it can also hide fear. The shadow of silence emerges when the act of withholding words is driven not by strength, but by avoidance. In relationships, silence can be used as punishment, creating distance, confusion, and anxiety. The absence of words becomes louder than any argument, leaving the other person to wrestle with the weight of not knowing. In this sense, silence is not neutral. It shapes the field of human connection just as forcefully as speech. Consider boundaries. When someone crosses a line, silence can be the first signal that something is wrong. The refusal to respond, the deliberate withholding of acknowledgement, communicates disapproval or withdrawal of respect. Yet if silence becomes habitual, if a person consistently swallows their truth, then silence shifts from being a tool of authority to a symptom of repression. The unspoken accumulates. It lingers in the body, surfacing in tension, resentment, or sudden outbursts. The shadow of silence is that it can mask what most needs to be expressed, allowing wounds to fester in darkness. In power dynamics, silence is even more complex. A leader who chooses silence in a meeting can generate unease or curiosity. Subordinates project their own interpretations. Are they dissatisfied? Are they testing us? Are they waiting for someone to step up? Silence shifts the burden of meaning onto others. The one who holds silence holds control because people instinctively try to fill the void. At the same time, silence from those without power can indicate submission or resignation. A worker who stays silent in the face of mistreatment is not commanding respect, but enduring oppression. The same gesture, silence, can signify dominance or defeat, depending on who wields it and why. Culturally, silence has been revered as sacred. Monks, sages, and mystics retreat into silence, not because they lack something to say, but because silence itself is a form of wisdom. In silence, they encounter truths that words cannot capture. Silence becomes the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious, between the known and the infinite. Yet even here lies the shadow. Retreating into silence can also become an escape from responsibility, a withdrawal from engagement with the living world. What looks like wisdom can sometimes be avoidance dressed in spiritual clothing. Psychologically, silence confronts us with ourselves. In conversations, silence often feels uncomfortable because it exposes what lies beneath the surface. When the usual rhythm of speech breaks, the mind scrambles to fill the gap. We become acutely aware of our own insecurities, our own impatience, our own discomfort. This is why silence is often broken too quickly, not because there is something meaningful to add, but because the quiet reveals too much. The shadow of silence is that it forces confrontation with the self, with the other, with the unspoken truth in the room. There is also the silence of listening. To truly listen requires setting aside the impulse to respond, to insert oneself, to dominate with words. Listening is active silence, a silence that makes space for another's truth to unfold. This silence is powerful, yet difficult, because it demands surrender of control. In a world that prizes constant expression, active silence is countercultural. It says, I do not need to assert myself right now. I will let your words exist fully before mine enter. The shadow here is that listening silence can easily tip into absorption without response, leaving the speaker feeling unseen if the silence is never broken by acknowledgement. In conflict, silence sharpens the tension. The absence of reply during an argument can feel heavier than shouting. It forces the other to confront their own words without deflection. Silence in these moments is not weakness but strategy. It denies fuel to the fire. Yet conflict silence can also escalate hostility. When someone craves dialogue but is met with silence, their frustration grows. Silence becomes a wall, a refusal of connection. What one sees as strength, the other experiences as rejection. The shadow of silence is its ambiguity. It can heal or harm, depending on intent and context. The paradox is that silence both conceals and reveals. It hides emotion, yet exposes discomfort. It withholds truth, yet magnifies curiosity. It protects boundaries, yet creates distance. It signals power, yet can betray fear. Silence is never empty. It is full of meaning, and its meaning is never fixed. It depends on who holds it, why it is held, and how others receive it. This is why silence is often remembered longer than words. A phrase may be forgotten, but the silence before or after it lingers, echoing in memory, heavy with everything it could have meant. The archetype of authority is not merely a position, a title, or a badge of recognition. It is an archetype that lives in the human psyche, a universal image that evokes obedience, respect, and submission. Long before institutions existed, before written laws, the archetype of authority was already present in myths, rituals, and ancestral memory. It is the father who sets order, the chief who commands loyalty, the elder whose wisdom guides the tribe. It is not about personal power alone. It is about the collective need for order, structure, and leadership. When someone embodies this archetype, others sense it instantly. Authority is felt before it is explained. You can recognize this in the way a room changes when a true leader enters. Nothing needs to be said, yet people adjust their posture, lower their voices, or shift their attention. The archetype of authority has been activated, and the unconscious mind responds automatically. It is not a matter of rational decision, but instinct. Human beings are wired to recognize signals of dominance, certainty, and control. Tone of voice, body language, and above all, words that carry conviction. All of these awaken the archetype within us. At its core, the archetype of authority arises from a deep psychological longing for order in the midst of chaos. Life is unpredictable, uncertain, and often overwhelming. Authority provides direction. It gives boundaries to the boundless, rules to the unruly, clarity to the confused. People gravitate toward those who embody authority because they offer psychological relief. To follow a leader is to feel safe within structure. This is why, even in moments of crisis, the person who speaks with clarity and certainty can gather followers instantly. Authority fills the vacuum where uncertainty reigns. But authority is not only external. There is also the authority of the self. Each person carries within them an inner figure that demands discipline, responsibility, and structure. When ignored, this inner authority punishes with guilt, shame, or self-doubt. When honored, it provides strength, focus, and purpose. The archetype of authority, then, is not just about commanding others, but about commanding oneself. The ability to say, "I've decided," or "I will," with conviction begins with aligning to that inner authority. Those who fail to master themselves cannot convincingly embody authority to others because the archetype requires congruence between inner truth and outer expression. Consider the role of language in activating authority. Certain phrases act as signals that awaken respect. "Let's be clear. This is how it will be. I expect better." These are not just statements, but invocations of authority. They trigger recognition in the listener. Here is someone who speaks from a higher ground, someone who carries the weight of decision. The unconscious responds by yielding. Even children who cannot yet fully understand logic respond instinctively to words spoken with authority. It is not the content alone. It is the symbolic charge of the phrase, the tone, the certainty behind it that makes it powerful. The shadow of the archetype, however, must also be acknowledged. Authority can degenerate into tyranny when it loses its grounding in wisdom and service. When authority becomes about domination rather than guidance, it breeds fear instead of respect. Yet even in its distorted form, the archetype retains its power. People may resist, rebel, or despise authority, but they cannot ignore it. The figure of the tyrant still occupies the psyche, demanding reaction. This reveals the dual nature of authority. It is both necessary and dangerous, both protective and oppressive. The archetype contains within it the potential for order or for abuse, depending on how it is embodied. Authority also operates through symbols beyond words. Uniforms, Rome's crowns, and even subtle markers like posture or silence all tap into the archetype. These symbols are not arbitrary. They carry centuries of association that live in the collective unconscious. A person dressed in black robes behind a bench does not need to shout to command respect. The symbol itself invokes authority. A military officer's uniform, a doctor's white coat, a leader's podium. All of these carry symbolic weight that transcends the individual wearing them. People respond not only to the person, but to the archetype the person represents. What is most striking is how quickly authority can be established when someone aligns themselves with this archetype. In a group where no one takes control, the first person who speaks decisively often becomes the leader, even if they lack formal power. Their confidence and clarity awaken the archetype of authority in the group, and others instinctively follow. Conversely, when someone in a position of authority hesitates, fumbles, or contradicts themselves, respect diminishes. The archetype withdraws, and the authority figure becomes just another individual. Authority is maintained not by title, but by consistency in embodying the archetype. There is also a paradox at the heart of authority. People resist it even as they crave it. On one hand, individuals desire freedom, autonomy, and independence. On the other hand, they long for guidance, order, and structure. This tension creates both admiration and resentment toward authority figures. The archetype ensures that both impulses exist simultaneously. Followers may complain about rules while secretly fearing their absence. Children may rebel against parents while unconsciously needing their boundaries. Citizens may distrust leaders while instinctively turning to them in times of crisis. Authority is both the object of resistance and the source of stability, and this paradox ensures that it never disappears from human experience. To embody authority, then, is to carry the weight of projection. People will see in you not only the individual you are, but the archetype you represent. They will project their desires for order, their fears of control, their longing for guidance, and their resentment of limitation. To stand in authority is to stand in the crossfire of these projections and to navigate them without collapsing. True authority is not about demanding submission, but about holding the archetype with integrity. It is about knowing that the power is not yours alone. It flows through you from something older, deeper, and collective. Authority, in its archetypal form, is always larger than the person who carries it. It is an ancient image that surfaces in every society, every culture, every relationship where order is required. To speak with authority, to move with authority, to embody authority, is to awaken this ancient force in the human psyche. People respond not simply to you, but to the timeless archetype that stands behind you, shaping the field of respect and obedience around you. Boundaries as invisible walls. Boundaries are not visible fences, nor do they need to be written rules. They are invisible walls shaped by language, presence, and conviction. Every relationship, whether personal, professional, or social, depends on the strength of these unseen structures. Without boundaries, energy leaks, respect erodes, and chaos enters. With boundaries, clarity arises, order takes shape, and dignity is preserved. These invisible walls are not built from stone or steel. They are built from words, silence, gestures, and choices. They exist wherever a person says, "This is where I end, and this is where you begin." The psyche recognizes boundaries instinctively. Even children, before they understand complex rules, know when a firm no has been spoken with conviction. That single word is not merely a refusal. It is a symbolic wall that marks territory. It communicates this space, this time, this dignity belongs to me. To respect that wall is to acknowledge the autonomy of the other. To disregard it is to invite conflict, for the unconscious mind does not ignore boundaries. It pushes against them until they are enforced. Boundaries also function as mirrors. They reflect how much value you place on yourself. When boundaries are weak, others sense that weakness and move closer, testing, pressing, taking what is not offered. When boundaries are strong, others feel the invisible resistance and recalibrate their behavior. It is not about aggression or hostility. It is about firmness. A quiet statement such as, "That doesn't work for me," can alter the entire dynamic of a relationship. The boundary has been drawn, and suddenly the air changes. People recognize the invisible wall, even though nothing physical has shifted. The power of boundaries lies in their subtlety. Unlike visible walls, invisible boundaries can be carried everywhere. They are mobile structures that travel with you into every conversation, workplace, and home. They are not external defenses, but internal convictions. The way you speak, the way you sit, the way you decline, all of it communicates the architecture of your boundaries. A person with strong boundaries does not need to shout. Their silence, their choice of words, their steady presence already communicates that they are not easily moved. The shadow of boundaries, however, must also be acknowledged. Boundaries can protect, but they can also isolate. A wall too high and too rigid does not simply keep intruders out, it keeps connection out as well. When someone surrounds themselves with impermeable boundaries, they may feel safe, but they also become lonely, cut off from intimacy. The challenge lies in knowing when to open the gate, when to soften the wall without demolishing it. Healthy boundaries breathe. They expand and contract, allowing exchange without collapse. Boundaries are also tested most fiercely in close relationships. Strangers may hesitate to overstep, but partners, family members, or colleagues often push hardest. The unconscious drive behind this is simple: to test where the walls truly stand. People want to know how far they can go, what is permitted, what is not. If you never speak your boundary, you leave the other in ambiguity, and ambiguity breeds disrespect. The moment you say, "I won't accept that," you create clarity. Whether they agree or not, They now know the shape of the wall. Respect begins with recognition, and recognition begins with the courage to declare limits. In professional life, boundaries act as the foundation of authority. A manager who fails to set boundaries with their team quickly loses credibility. Requests multiply, demands escalate, and soon chaos replaces structure. But a manager who says, "This is the process," or "I'm not available after this time," communicates the invisible walls that hold the group together. The same applies in creative work, where boundaries protect focus. The discipline to say no to distraction is an invisible wall that guards the space where ideas are born. Without it, creativity is drowned by interruption. The symbolic nature of boundaries is crucial. A single gesture, a closed notebook, a turned body, a steady gaze can communicate just as strongly as words. People unconsciously interpret these signals as boundaries. A pause before responding, a refusal to engage in unnecessary conflict, a calm repetition of, "That's not acceptable." All of these create invisible walls. What matters is consistency. An inconsistent boundary invites intrusion, but a consistent boundary builds a reputation. People soon learn where the walls stand and adapt their behavior accordingly. Psychologically, boundaries serve as containers. Just as a vessel needs edges to hold water, the psyche needs boundaries to hold identity. Without them, the self spills into others, losing definition. This is why those who lack boundaries often feel exhausted, drained, or resentful. They are carrying burdens that do not belong to them. Each time they say yes when they mean no, a piece of energy leaks out. Each time they tolerate disrespect, a crack forms in the wall. Over time, the invisible structure weakens until collapse occurs in the form of burnout, anger, or withdrawal. Boundaries are also acts of self-respect. To say, "I deserve to rest," or "I will not allow this treatment," is to affirm dignity. Others recognize and often mirror this respect. Boundaries are not only defensive, but generative. They teach others how to engage. They create frameworks in which trust can grow. When people know the rules of engagement, they feel safer. The walls do not suffocate, they provide structure. Just as children thrive within consistent boundaries, adults thrive in relationships where invisible walls are clear and honored. Even silence functions as a boundary. Choosing not to respond, not to engage, not to explain endlessly is a form of wall building. Silence says, "I do not owe you this piece of myself." It is not neglect but preservation. Silence paired with conviction communicates boundaries more powerfully than 1,000 explanations. The less you justify, the more your walls stand tall. At the deepest level, boundaries remind us of separateness. No matter how close two people become, there remains a line where one ends and the other begins. To honor this line is to honor individuality. To cross it carelessly is to risk dissolution of respect. Invisible walls preserve the sacredness of the self while allowing connection to occur across clear lines. They are the architecture of autonomy, the unseen structures that shape every relationship, every interaction, every exchange of energy, the transformation of identity. Identity is not fixed. It is not a rigid mask we wear from birth to death, but a fluid and shifting constellation of symbols, stories, and roles. Every person lives with an evolving image of themselves, shaped by words, shaped by memory, shaped by the invisible architecture of the unconscious. To speak of identity is to speak of transformation, because even in moments when we feel most certain of who we are, change is already occurring beneath the surface. The transformation of identity is constant, and it is guided by the language we use, the boundaries we set, and the authority we embody. From the earliest moments of life, identity begins as reflection. A child sees themselves first through the gaze of the parent. Approval or rejection, encouragement or criticism, these become mirrors in which the self is recognized. The words spoken in those formative years plant seeds that grow into unconscious narratives. You are capable, you are difficult, you are loved, you are a burden. These phrases, repeated or implied, take root in the psyche, forming the foundations of identity. But these foundations are not permanent, they can be rebuilt. Transformation begins when one recognizes that the identity inherited is not the identity that must be lived. Identity carries both light and shadow. There is the self we present to the world, the persona crafted to gain acceptance, love, and belonging. And there is the shadow self, the aspects we hide, deny, or reject because they do not align with the image we want others to see. Transformation of identity requires confronting this shadow, acknowledging the repressed, and integrating it into the whole. Without this process, identity remains fragmented, brittle, easily shattered when life challenges the mask we wear. To transform is to unify, to allow the self to expand beyond the confines of the socially approved persona. Language is central to this transformation. The words we choose about ourselves shape who we become. A person who repeatedly says, "I am not enough," etches that phrase into the unconscious, and soon their behavior mirrors it. Their choices shrink, their confidence falters, their posture folds inward. Yet when someone shifts their language to, "I am capable," the psyche responds differently. The phrase does not merely describe, it creates. Identity transforms with every declaration. This is why affirmations, when spoken with conviction, are not empty rituals, they are tools of identity reconstruction. The unconscious listens to language as truth, and in listening, it reshapes the self. The transformation of identity also requires boundaries. Without boundaries, the self dissolves into the expectations of others, becoming a mirror of external demands rather than an authentic expression. To say, "That doesn't work for me," is not only a defense against intrusion, it is a declaration of identity. Each time we enforce a boundary, we reinforce who we are. Boundaries carve out space where the self can grow independently, unshaped by coercion or manipulation. They act as scaffolding for transformation, allowing the individual to reconstruct their identity without collapse. Authority plays its role as well. To declare, "I've decided," or "This is who I am now," is to summon the archetype of authority within the self. Transformation is not passive, it requires decision. The moment someone claims authority over their identity, they step into a different role. The past self may whisper, the world may resist, but the inner declaration carries weight. People begin to recognize the change not because of external signs, but because of the conviction with which the new identity is spoken. Authority anchors transformation in the realm of action rather than wish. Every transformation involves death and rebirth. Old identities must be shed for new ones to emerge. This is why transformation often feels like crisis, because something familiar is dying. The roles we once clung to no longer fit. The narratives once told about us no longer apply. There is grief in this process, grief for the old self, but also liberation. To release an outdated identity is to create space for something truer, something more aligned with the depth of the psyche. Each shedding is both loss and renewal, a cycle as old as myth itself. Transformation of identity is rarely linear. It is cyclical, spiraling, returning to themes in deeper and deeper layers. A person may believe they have changed only to encounter old patterns again. But each return offers the chance to embody the transformation more fully. Identity is sculpted not in a single moment of revelation, but in repeated acts of choice, repeated affirmations of who we are becoming. Each, no, to the old self, and each, yes, to the emerging self strengthens the new identity. Symbols are the language of transformation. Tattoos, rituals, clothing, new names. These are not superficial but symbolic markers of identity change. They tell the psyche, I am no longer who I was. Such symbols give form to inner transformation, making it visible and tangible. They signal to others as well, creating recognition and accountability. The symbolic gesture completes the inner shift, weaving it into external reality. Transformation remains abstract until it is expressed through symbol, whether in words, actions, or signs at its deepest level. The transformation of identity is not about becoming someone new, but about uncovering what has always been hidden. Beneath the layers of conditioning, beneath the masks and defenses, lies the essence of self waiting to be realized. Transformation is less an invention than a revelation. The journey is not outward but inward, peeling back the false identities until the authentic core shines through. Yet even that authenticity is not static. It expands, evolves, and takes on new forms as life demands. The true self is not a fixed point, but a living process of becoming. The transformation of identity is both personal and collective. As individuals shift, so do the groups they belong to. When one person reclaims their voice, sets their boundaries, or steps into authority, the dynamics of family, workplace, or society subtly shift. Transformation radiates outward, challenging others to reconsider their own identities. Identity, therefore, is never isolated, it is relational. To transform the self is to participate in the transformation of the larger web of connection in which we live. Respect is not requested, it is commanded. And it doesn't come from force, anger, or control. It comes from speaking few words with unshakable conviction. Remember this, the world doesn't respond to the noise you make. It responds to the weight of your words. So the next time someone crosses the line, don't argue, don't justify, don't beg. Simply say one of these 5 phrases and watch how quickly people adjust because they have no choice. You've drawn the boundary, you've claimed the authority, and from that moment forward, respect is yours.